everyone, and welcome to the first ever JEANNE'S Film and Television Awards, also known as the JEANNE'S. I am so excited to be here. I am your host, Jean. But not only am I your host, I'm also the sole member of our voting panel. Okay, listen, we're not a numerous bunch, nor are we particularly diverse. It's only made up of one black person, but that's still one more black person than the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Am I right? Am I right? Now, these awards are all about celebrating the very best of what 2022 has had to offer in the world of entertainment. At least the very best from what I've seen. Again, I'm the only voter on this panel, and that brings me to my first disclaimer of the evening, and that is that I of course have not been able to watch every single release of 2022. It would simply be impossible for me to catch up on everything that came out. You know, now more than ever we have so many options out there from so many different streaming platforms and studios that it's been a challenge to even get this gene pool of options for these awards. But I've tried my best, I've done my homework, I've been toiling away working so hard, watching all of these films and TV shows for you guys, and I think I have a pretty good group of options to pull from for each of these categories. And speaking of the categories of nominees, we're doing something a little bit different here. This isn't like the Golden Globes, snooze, the Oscars, boo. Like, we're doing something different here. I've added a bit of spice, I've added a bit of juice in there to get things cooking, okay? And I've created some different categories that I can judge each of these nominees by, just to make it a more entertaining experience overall. And maybe the Oscars will take a page out of my book, because their ratings are not looking great and they could use a bit of spice to mix things up. Now, having said all of that, because of course I am the sole judge, jury and executioner of the Jeannie Awards, a lot of these categories and nominees will be influenced by me. My opinion, my preferences, you know, the way that I experience and see entertainment. That would definitely be coloring, no pun intended, the nominees that you see present here. So bear that in mind, and this is also a reason why it's so important to have greater representation in actual voting bodies for actually important awards. Not to say that the Jeannies are important, okay, but for the other awards out there, there are second, okay, to the Jeannies. That's why it's so important for them to have that kind of representation on their voting boards, to make sure that they have a diverse community to draw their opinions from. But of course, as per usual, I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on each of these categories and each of these nominees, so please be sure to share them in the chat if you're watching this live as it premieres, or in the comments below if you're watching this afterwards. I can't wait to get into this discussion with you. And for my final disclaimer before we get into the main event, I just wanted to let you guys know that each of these categories are going to feature both films and TV shows. Yes, that's right, I am putting both mediums together to compete with one another in the same categories, because guess what, long gone are the days where TV was lagging behind in quality. Okay, nowadays we can fully accept that we have passed the Renaissance period for television, and we've now come to expect premiere television as almost the standard, especially for streaming. So I figure, why not pit them against each other? Why have separate categories for each medium? Sure, there are differences in the mediums, but I think they can stand to compete with one another, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing here today, putting them against each other and seeing who wins. But also take note that as I read the nominees for each category, it's not going to be in order of preference, it's just going to be in alphabetical order. So it's all fair game until the final judgment is made by me. And I can't wait to hear you guys' thoughts on all of this, because yes, now it is time to get into the first category for the Jeannie Awards. Woo! So for the first category, we are already starting big. There is no filler here, guys, okay? We're getting straight to business. And the first one up here is Best Animated Film. or television series. And the nominees here are Intergalactic, Harley Quinn Season 3, Pinocchio, Rick and Morty Season 6, The Bad Guys, The Sea Beast, Turning Red, and Wendell and Wild. So as I mentioned before, the Jeannie Awards are all about celebrating the very, very best that the year has had to offer, that I've also had a chance to check out. And I have to say, overall, I'm pretty pleased with the options that I got for the animated category, but I wouldn't say that it's my favorite year for animation. As I mentioned recently with my reaction for the Golden Globes nominations, we won't talk about the competition, but this was a very disappointing year for Disney, who came out with 3 releases, 2 through Pixar, and only one of them were nominated for Golden Globes. Again, we don't talk about the competition, but it is definitely not as strong of a year for them as it has been in the past. I mean, previously they have dominated in the animation field, and this year they found themselves slipping very, very badly. And I think it shows, because now you see so many slots open up for other studios to slide in there. They've really been able to make use of this opportunity where Disney has stumbled, and they have come out on top, you know, with their offerings. So first one up we have is Intergalactic. This was the Kid Cudi animated film that featured a lot of his original songs. And what really struck me about this film was the different style of animation. I think at this point a lot of us are looking for animation that feels different and unique, especially in a post Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse world. And this is something that Intergalactic definitely rose to the challenge for, where they created this really unique world that's very Into the Spider-Verse-esque, you know, using slower frame rates in order to give it this kind of comic book feeling, and that kind of ties in perfectly to the character, much like Spider-Verse did, where in this case the main character is actually a comic book illustrator. He's created an iconic comic book character that he used to be a part of his street art and is now going to be commodified for a major comic company. So that's what really drew me to this film overall. The story itself is great. It's quite relatable and down to earth. It's an adult animated film, which is something that's, you know, rare for the Western audience. And I think it was carried out really, really well, especially considering that it focuses on the, you know, young Black community in New York. I think it was very, like I said, down to earth and relatable, and really fresh for the field of animation. And we see some of that be repeated in this list, which we'll get into in a second, but I think it speaks to just how much diversity we're starting to see in the field of animation in general. When it comes to season 3 of Harley Quinn, I only started watching the animated series recently, and I was pleasantly not surprised, because I've heard that it's excellent, but I was happy to be able to reaffirm that it is very, very good. The series is excellent. I love this take on Harley Quinn, and I did very much enjoy season 3, which further explores her relationship with Poison Ivy, okay, as well as her own personal journey, you know, from being the Joker's side chick to finding herself and her inner voice, and kind of discovering her true purpose as a villain or an anti-hero, or perhaps a hero. You know, that's a really compelling journey for the character to go through. And not to mention, we have some great side characters that we meet along the way. We have a brilliant iteration of Batman / Bruce Wayne, which is just superb, as well as Catwoman, and like I said, Poison Ivy. So I really enjoyed this series, and I was so happy to finally be able to catch up on it before doing the Jeannies, because I'm happy to include it in this list. Next on the list, we have Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I hope you didn't get confused with the Pinocchio that we got in September. That was by Disney. It was a live action remake. Yeah, that's not the one I was talking about. I was talking about the one from Guillermo del Toro. I don't know about you guys, but I was talking the one from Guillermo, who really just put his whole heart and soul into this iteration of the story. And what's really remarkable here is, yes, the animation style, the stop motion is really beautifully done. It's so elevated. But for me, it's the fact that he took this age-old classic story and just did something new with it. He didn't try to pump out another version of the 1940 animated film from Disney. He just recontextualized it, plopped it into fascist Italy. Okay, I just did something completely different with this version of Pinocchio. And yes, it is darker, and yes, it is very sad. I've said in my Golden Globes video that, you know, Pinocchio in general is a sad story, and that's what tends to put me off watching it over and over again, because it's really tragic to me. But what Guillermo del Toro did was, it's not just milking the sadness and tragedy, it's really diving into Giuseppe's psyche. And I think Guillermo del Toro did a phenomenal job of exploring the character of Giuseppe and recontextualizing his relationship with Pinocchio, as well as recontextualizing the story of Pinocchio as a whole when putting it in the middle of fascist Italy under Mussolini. Just what sheer brilliance. You know, we already know that Guillermo del Toro is fascinated by fascism and the rise of fascism. He already covered that in Pan's Labyrinth, in the case of the Spanish movement. But here we see him explore it in Italy as well, in this classic Italian fable. And I think he's done so brilliantly with some striking animated visuals. And then next up we have Rick and Morty season 6. I just watched the last episode. It's great. Like, what can I say? Rick and Morty is good. Next, I do think that if there was a point of improvement that I could offer to the creators, it would be to refrain or at least exercise restraint in being too meta. I think there is such thing as being too meta and being distracted by trying to be so meta that audiences are just like, you know, their minds are blown and they're not even comprehending the story itself. I definitely think there were parts of season 6 that felt like the priority was to be crazy and meta and have all sorts of commentary on all sorts of fandoms, rather than giving us a compelling narrative that could run throughout the season, focusing on these iconic characters. So that would be my only point of contention. But I just think the series is so funny, so clever and imaginative, and the character of Rick is just literally an icon. Like, he's one of my favorite characters ever created. So yeah, he was always going to make it on this list. It would have to be awful for it to not be considered one of my favorite animated projects of the year. When it comes to the bad guys, this film was so wholly underrated. It pained me. When I finally got a chance to watch it, I was just so shocked by how brilliant it was, and I would implore you guys to all check it out. It's not as mind-blowing as a Zootopia, if I'm being honest, but I just love the character dynamics. The idea that you have this ragtag group of criminals who finally challenge the perception that they have in society of being the bad guys, and they see that they actually enjoy doing good. I think it's a great lesson for kids. I think it also has that universality to it, where the humor is, you know, accessible to people of all ages. And again, we see a different animation style for DreamWorks, which is great to see them experimenting a little. And overall, I thought it was just a really great, well-written, tight little animated film that really left a positive impression on me. And a similar thing can be said for the Sea Beast. The Sea Beast in many ways is reminiscent of a DreamWorks film. You know, if I didn't see that Netflix logo at the beginning there, I would be convinced that it was a DreamWorks movie, not gonna lie. But the Sea Beast is an absolutely stunning animated film. Okay, it's beautiful, but what really struck me about it is not only the incredible visuals, and not only the fact that it's so well written and it has this really beautiful message about, well, colonialism. There are definitely, you know, messages about colonialism in there, but also animal preservation and environmental preservation. I also love the fact that at the center of the story you have this young black girl, okay, as the main character, and that will just never get old to me. You know, as someone who grew up in the early 2000s where that sort of representation was scarce, few and far between. Few and far between. That means the world to me still. So I really appreciated that representation in the film. I appreciated the fact that the animators did a good job in animating the girl's natural 4C curls. That must have been a task, but you know, the technology has developed to the point where you can realistically do that kind of texture, and they're making use of that, which is beautiful to see. And I must re-emphasize that the film itself is stunning. The way that it uses color is gorgeous. So it definitely ended up being a film that stuck out in my mind. And then next up we have Turning Red. Now I won't say too much about this one because I do have a full review on it, but it was met with a lot of hate, a lot of controversy for no goddamn reason other than people found it difficult to relate to the main character because she was a Canadian Asian character. No, I'm not buying it, okay? Because the themes that are explored in Turning Red have a universal feel to them. You know, there are definitely elements that are specific to that culture, and people from that culture probably relate to that the most, and they will just, you know, see that representation. It will do something special for them. There are also these broader themes that are discussed in the film and explored in the character that have universal appeal. So I don't buy the whole I can't relate to blah blah blah. I just think it was met with a lot of contention because some people really cannot get over the fact that there is more than one type of main character that can exist in media. But I'm glad that studios like Disney are still pushing forward with this movement towards representation, even if it is giving them hell. Even if it is dragging them for filth. Which brings me to the final nominee, Wendell and Wild. Now this was actually part of a historic collaboration between Jordan Peele and Henry Selick, who did Nightmare Before Christmas, and keeps insisting that it was not in fact Tim Burton who directed the film, even though it's often attributed to him. And considering his animation style, it's quite iconic, okay, that he decided to collaborate with Jordan Peele, who has made it his mission statement with Monkey Paw Productions to highlight, you know, black characters and put them in the center of horror films. And he's done just that with Wendell and Wild as well, where he voices a character as does Key. But what's really remarkable here is, of course, the animation style, you know, very reminiscent of what we saw in Corpse Bride and Nightmare Before Christmas, and the fact that that's centered around a black character, numerous black characters and characters of color, and also characters that are non-binary as well. Like, it's just an updated version of the kinds of stories that we used to see Henry Selick and Tim Burton tell, and I think it's wonderful. I think it's done in a very authentic way. It's not preachy whatsoever. It just feels natural for that world. And so with all of that being said, it's time to find out who wins the award for Best Animated Film or Television Series. I have the envelope right here. And the Jeannie Award goes to Pinocchio! Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Yes, that is the best animated film or TV series of the year. Congratulations to Guillermo del Toro for winning this prestigious award. Yes. So the next category up is yet another big one, guys. Like I said, there is no filler here, okay, in the Jeannie Awards. The next one up we've got is Best Comedy Film or Television Series. Oh, get ready to laugh, get ready to chuckle. And here the nominees are Abbott Elementary Seasons 1 and 2, Atlanta Seasons 3 and 4, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Ghosts UK Series 4, Our Flag Means Death, The Bear, and What We Do in the Shadows Season 4. So I'm not going to be diving into each of these nominees with as much depth as I did for the animated category. Don't worry, okay? I mean, you guys know I love Abbott Elementary. You guys know, you should know. If you don't, you should know that I love Abbott Elementary, okay? And you guys know I love Atlanta. Like, there's no real surprises here. I would guess that the biggest surprise for you guys would be Ghosts UK Series 4. I needed to be very clear about this one. I needed to be very clear because I'm talking about the British version. If you haven't seen Ghosts in general, check it out. But the UK version of Ghosts, you really need to watch it because I think it's infinitely better than the American one. And I mean, yeah, I am saying this because I'm British. But who cares? Okay, it's still a really good show and I highly recommend it. It's on its 4th series. Okay, in the UK they say series, not season, and it's just absolutely brilliant. The cast is made up mostly of the cast from the classic iconic British historical series Horrible Histories. Seeing the cast back together again in Ghosts was just such a treat. They have that incredible chemistry together and they're amazing as a cast, and the series overall is just so funny and so charming. So I would highly recommend you check out the UK Ghosts. Okay, don't play me now. I'm not talking about the US one, I'm talking about the UK one. I don't care about CB yet, please. I don't care. And then the next series that I haven't really talked a lot about would be The Bear on Hulu. I mentioned it in my Golden Globes, my Golden Globes video, but The Bear came out as a sort of surprise hit. It was a slow burn because initially I had some of you guys telling me to check it out when it first came out on Hulu, and it was very much underrated at that point, but then as more people started to discover it, then it came across to Disney Plus, you know, across the pond, we all just fell in love with it and realized just how much of a special hidden gem it was. It's a phenomenal series that focuses on this chef who used to work at a Michelin star restaurant and is now running his deceased brother's sandwich shop basically, and the sandwich shop is very, you know, in disrepair. It's a bit shambolic and it certainly is a very different environment to what he's used to in a Michelin star restaurant, but he's able to employ that kind of discipline and that training that has become second nature to him into this whole different setting, whilst at the same time learning that he doesn't have to throw everything out with the kitchen sink, and actually he can adopt some of the ways that they have been doing things for years successfully, as part of his kind of plan to rejuvenate the place and breathe new life into it. It's also a comedy. It's also a comedy. It's not the most ha-ha comedy, you know, like Ghosts and Our Flag Means Death. They're very funny, whereas this is like a dramedy. But overall, there are some really funny moments as well, especially with the rest of the cast, and they make for a great ensemble. And then you have the Watiti duo with Our Flag Means Death and What We Do in the Shadows. What We Do in the Shadows is produced by Taika Waititi as a spin-off of his film from 2014 with Jermaine Clement, but Taika Waititi actually stars in Our Flag Means Death as Blackbeard. Okay, and these are both shows that you should watch as a matter of priority right now, right here, right now. And then of course you have Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is a comedy, a drama, a tragedy, a multiversal masterpiece. I mean, is there really any other film like it? Is there any other thing like it? I mean, we even had another multiversal film come out this year that's nothing like this film. And so I have it here, I have the envelope. It is in fact time to reveal who has won the Jeannie Award for Best Comedy Film or Television Series. And the Jeannie Award goes to Everything Everywhere All at Once. Absolutely. Was there ever any doubt? Of course it does. Of course it does. So next up, guys, take a deep breath in, because the stakes only getting higher and higher. If you thought the stakes were high with animation and comedy, you ain't seen nothing yet, because we have officially arrived at our very first acting category. Oh my god! Yes, we're finally going to be talking about the beautiful faces in front of the camera. And the first category up is Best Supporting Actress in a Film or Television Series. And the nominees here are Angela Bassett for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Elizabeth Debicki for The Crown Season 5, Janelle Monáe for Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery, Keke Palmer for Nope, Lashana Lynch for The Woman King, Malika Faruthan for The Empress, Sadie Sink for Stranger Things Season 4, and Stephanie Hsu for Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is a killer category. You can't look me in the eyes and tell me that this right here isn't one of the hardest categories that you have ever heard. This to me, I can tell you right now, this was one of the hardest ones that I worked on. period. Best supporting actress, there were so many to choose from, and honestly it just makes me so happy because it speaks to the quality of writing for these female characters, that they were able to deliver such incredible performances, you know, off of that writing. They were really able to rise to that challenge and just go off sis, you know, on screen. So I'm so happy that we have so many options here, even more so if I hadn't restricted myself to 8 nominees per category. Let's get into it here. You know, I know that you guys will have your favorites. I know that you guys will have your favorites, but hopefully if I've done my job right, I've made this tough enough that you're actually having second thoughts considering who else is on the list. But like I said before, I would love to hear you guys' thoughts down below because we're going to get into it now. So as I said before, I'm not going to be diving into each nominee with a lot of depth, especially not the ones that I've already covered in previous videos, but I do just want to shout out the ones that I haven't covered as much. And the first one that comes to mind is Keke Palmer in Nope. Keke Palmer had a phenomenal year with her role in Nope being a breakout role for her. You know, this is someone that has been working in the industry for a very long time, as she keeps reminding us. So it's pretty incredible to see that after all that time, she finally got this role that made her recognized in mainstream white media. But it was well deserved nonetheless, because she really was the star of Nope. Her character at first seems quite two-dimensional. She's like the happy-go-lucky black girl. She has the attitude, she has the bright, charismatic personality. As the film goes on and you have the typical twists and turns of a Jordan Peele film, more and more is asked of this character and asked of Keke Palmer as an actress, and she rises to the occasion each and every time. She is able to match the energy needed for the escalation of action and tension that is required in an excellent Jordan Peele film, and that is why she stood out as a star this year. But for all these other ladies, I would say that I have harped on and on about the excellence of their performances elsewhere, so I think I've done enough. I think you all understand why they are all here today, if not for my reasons but for your own. And so it's time to pick up the purple envelope, because it's time to announce the winner for the Jeannie Award for Best Supporting Actress in a Film or Television Series. And the award goes to Angela Bassett for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Absolutely. Are you joking? Who do you think I am? What do you think this is? Of course it goes to Miss Bassett. Are you joking me? She killed in Wakanda Forever. I shouldn't have to explain myself, but I will. The gravitas, the power, the pain. Please. Ryan Coogler wrote these insanely beautiful, thoughtful monologues for Angela Bassett to just nail, and each and every line was just hammered down. But she made it look effortless, but it wasn't. Of course it wasn't, because the entire cast was going through so much, what with, you know, them having lost their previous star, the late Chadwick Boseman. So the whole film is full of emotion throughout, but when she has these monologues, it's just like an explosion of that emotion that's allowed to rise to the surface before she has to resume her position as being regal and distant, and it's just perfectly balanced in Angela Bassett's performance. You shouldn't be surprised. Alright, so naturally the next category up is Best Supporting Actor in a Film or Television Series, and here the nominees are Andy Serkis for Andor, Anthony Starr for The Boys Season 3, Brian Tyree Henry for Atlanta Seasons 3 and 4 and Causeway, Klaus Bang for Bad Sisters, Ke Huy Quan for Everything Everywhere All at Once, Matt Smith for House of the Dragon, and Paul Walter Hauser for Blackbird. So this again is a very strong list, and I think the fact that I was able to incorporate both performances from television series and films makes it even more competitive. Like, we'll run through my thoughts on most of these guys, because I think I haven't really discussed most of them on this channel. We'll start off with Andy Serkis. You might be surprised to see him pop up here, but don't be. If you watched episode 10 of Andor, I haven't gotten a chance to review Andor, by the way, on my channel, because guess what? I haven't finished it. I don't know why. I don't know why. This is a character flaw of my own, but I've really struggled to watch Andor from episode to episode. I'm finally on episode 11. I don't know if a part of me doesn't want it to end. I don't know if a part of me struggles to see the urgency in watching it now. Like, I just want to enjoy it in my own time. I don't know what it is, but either way, I've taken my time catching up with Andor. But I did finally get to episode 10, and seeing Andy Serkis in the prison episodes was just a delight, but like a sad one. And what kept standing out to me when I was making this list, there was this little Andy Serkis voice saying, "I can't swim. I can't swim." That level of heartbreak, heartache, tragedy, pain, suffering, I don't know if there's anyone else has been able to bring that out of me this year. Just from that one line of, "I can't swim." Just having that triumph just come to a dead halt. When you see this man who was willing to sacrifice everything for his fellow prisoners and for himself to have that chance at freedom, all of a sudden it's so close that he can taste it, but he says, "I can't swim." What? I was shook. I was like, what kind of messed up, godless world? And I initially had Stellan Skarsgård in his place, you know, from Andor, because he also does some really great work balancing two very different characters. One that's the rebel, one that's the antiques collector. But I just felt like Andy Serkis's performance just resonated emotionally with me in a way that Stellan Skarsgård's so far has not. And then next up on the list, we have Anthony Starr as Homelander. Do I need to explain myself? Hopefully I don't. Hopefully I've talked a lot about Andy Starr's performance as Homelander. He's like a VIP character across the board, like literally one of the best characters created for television, and he did that. Like, Anthony Starr did that, so I don't need to explain that. Brian Tyree Henry, I've been saying this all year, have I not? Have I not? I've been saying this all year, that Brian Tyree Henry's performances have just been so underrated. His performances in Atlanta season 3 and 4 were phenomenal. I thought he was the standout of the entire main cast, actually. And I think, you know, Donald Glover and the writers of Atlanta did a great job in developing the character of Alfred for the final seasons, giving us a full character arc. You know, when you consider where the character started from in season 1, that felt very satisfying and very true to the character as well. It's the same thing for his performance in Causeway, which he absolutely should have been nominated for. And then the last actor that I haven't really talked about on my channel yet would be Klaus Bang in Bad Sisters. This guy was on a whole different level. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Klaus Bang is able to balance the toxic masculinity stereotype, truly just the worst of the worst, down in the gutter type of man. You know, he is misogynistic, he claims to be religious, but of course everything that he does is a contradiction of that, and he's a massive hypocrite. He believes in traditional household values, but only as far as they benefit him. You know, it's classic toxic man, horrible, down in the gutter man. But then you have, because of good writing, you have this contrast, this juxtaposition for the character where he's also the smallest man alive, even though he's packaged in this attractive packaging because he's Klaus Bang, you know, he has an appeal to him, but deep down he is broken, he is small, and he feels as insignificant as he is. Absolutely. And that is what creates a fascinating character and a fascinating villain in Bad Sisters, and Klaus Bang knocked it out of the park. Literally knocked it out of the park. I don't even know what else to say. I watched Bad Sisters very recently, but as soon as I watched it, I was like, oh, okay, we need to edit the list. We need to edit the list. Changes need to be made to the list, because there's no way that I'm going to ignore these players in this series, and the series overall, which just ended up being a standout for me for the entire year. If you have not watched Apple TV Plus's Bad Sisters, get on it. But now, getting back to the task at hand, it is time to reveal who the winner is of the Jeannie Award for Best Supporting Actor in a Film or a TV Series. And the award goes to Ke Huy Quan for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Of course it does. Of course it does. Guys, Ke Huy Quan gave the performance of a lifetime in this film. Much like his co-stars Michelle Yeoh and Stephanie Hsu, he had to portray several different versions of the same character. For some scenes, he embodies this, really humble, meek husband to Michelle Yeoh's character. He's definitely not giving main character energy, okay? And he's not meant to. But then you contrast that against the moments where he is this alternate version of the character, who is this like special agent spy who has a black belt and everything, and he's on this mission to save the multiverse from Stephanie Hsu. And it's truly brilliant. Like I said, everyone on this cast is just absolutely incredible. But here we have, Ke Huy Quan, who for the longest time, had kind of disappeared from Hollywood after being in that, is it Indiana Jones? I said earlier this year, I do not care about that franchise. But I believe he's from Indiana Jones, right? But now he's all grown up and doing incredible things like his performance in this film. So for this next category, I decided to venture a little bit further afield than the type of content I usually cover on my channel, in order to fully represent the variety of content that I consume and the variety of content that has been out there, that has been released throughout this year. So for our next category, we have Best Reality Television Series or Documentary. I decided to bunch them together because I don't watch enough of each to be able to fill up an entire category. So we've mixed them all together here and we have quite an eclectic group. And here the nominees are All or Nothing Arsenal from Amazon Prime, Love is Blind Season 2 from Netflix, RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars 7 from VH1, RuPaul's Drag Race UK vs. the World from VH1/BBC3, The Great British Bake Off on Channel 4, and The Tinder Swindler from Netflix. So many of you guys may be surprised to hear some of these names pop up at the Jeannie Awards, but make no mistake, this is excellent content. Okay, this is in a very different genre to what I typically cover, apart from a couple of my Love is Blind videos. But make no mistake, I have been just as entertained, okay, just as wowed. I've had my mind blown, watching these shows as I have done for all of these other series and films that I've covered elsewhere. So I think they absolutely deserve a slot here at the Jeannie Awards. We don't discriminate in these parts, okay? And let's dive into my thoughts on some of these shows. The first one up that I wanted to mention was the RuPaul Drag Race entries, because guys, 2022 was the year that I discovered RuPaul's Drag Race. I know. I know what you're thinking. 2020. This show has been around for a long time, Jean. Where have you been? What have you been doing? I know. But listen, hear me out, okay? It's not that I didn't know the show existed. I knew that the show existed. Okay, I knew. I even knew there was a UK version. My thing was, I also knew myself. I knew that if I started watching RuPaul's Drag Race, it would consume my whole damn life. It would be over. My hopes, dreams, goals, aspirations, done. Literally one fatal blow. So I put it off. Yeah, I did. I put it off. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not crossing that line. That's not going to happen. But you see, one fateful day in late July, something happened where there wasn't a lot of content coming out on streaming, or I was getting a bit tired or a bit burnt out from all the options. I don't know which one it was, but one day I found myself clicking on RuPaul's face. And the rest was history. Guys, I have caught up on everything other than the international shows. I haven't watched Canada, Spain, Italy, Down Under. I haven't watched those, but I have completed the entirety of the original US show, of the UK show, of UK versus the World, obviously, Canada versus the World, that's still going on, and I've even caught up on All Stars. Yeah. Yeah, this was the substance of my life for that period. This is what I'll remember when I look back at, you know, late summer to early autumn of 2022. RuPaul's Drag Race. Now you'll notice I also threw in Love is Blind season 2. I reviewed both seasons that came out this year, seasons 2 and 3 on my channel. But of the two, I would definitely say I preferred season 2 other than season 3. And then lastly, you have All or Nothing Arsenal. Now this is a series about football. And listen, some of you guys might be surprised, some may not be surprised because you don't make assumptions. Good for you. But for those of you who are surprised, you're right to be. Because I'm not a football fan. Let me not say that too loudly because I live in the UK, okay, the homeland of football. I don't want to get deported now, do I? Okay, so no one tell the Home Office that I'm not a fan, but I don't care about this sport. I don't, sorry. What does the offside rule mean? I don't know. And here's the thing, there are some people who aren't fans of football who will become fans during like the Euros, right? The UEFA Cup, or during the World Cup, as you know, it's happening right now. There are a lot of people who are coming out of the woodwork, all of a sudden being huge fans of football because it's the World Cup. I'm not even one of those people. Which is why it's so significant that All or Nothing Arsenal is on my list today. Because guess what, guys? This series is freaking phenomenal. It's an anthology docu-series basically that focuses on different teams in the Premier League. Sometimes they delve into international teams as well. They have a Juventus one, and I can't remember, Paris Saint-Germain, I think they have one on that. But the ones that I've watched are actually, I watched the Juventus, I watched the Tottenham one, I watched the Man City one, and for this season they gave us an insight into the Arsenal Football Club, which is very close to my heart actually, because without giving away my location, but I live in London and I live in Islington, and those of you who know the UK will probably know that Islington is in fact the home of Arsenal. I live very close to Arsenal without giving away too much information. So this was a very, very big deal for a season, especially considering that the previous season focused on Tottenham, which is Arsenal's lifelong rival. You know, the North London derby is a really big deal because both of these teams are in North London, north-ish, North Central London. My main point here is that this series took a topic that I don't usually care about and made it the most fascinating thing that I've ever seen, and I enjoy every single episode of this series and I just become enraptured. And it's also something that I get to watch with my brother, which is also like a bonding experience. Speaking of, my brother is a fan of Liverpool, so if anyone's watching over at Amazon Prime over at the All or Nothing team, yeah, I'm gonna need the next season to be about Liverpool. Yeah, I'm gonna need the next season to be about Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp, because he is the most iconic football manager of the entire Premier League. But I did come to appreciate Arteta as well after this season of All or Nothing. But I'm not gonna bore you too much with the football talk. All I'll say is that I'm a really big fan of this series and I'm looking forward to the next season and really hoping that it's about Liverpool this time around. And so with that, it's time to see who has won the Jeannie Award for Best Reality TV Series / Documentary. And the award goes to All or Nothing Arsenal. Woo! The one time that I become a football fan. So for our next category up, we are back to our regular scheduled programming, because this category is very near and dear to my heart and it's something that I have covered a lot here on my channel, and that is Best Comic Book Film or Television Series. And here the nominees are Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Moon Knight, Peacemaker, The Batman, and The Boys Season 3. So I think it's fair to say that in 2022 we officially reached the saturation point for comic book movies and TV shows. You know, the entire genre just feels like it is full to the point of bursting. And while some people have been calling out superhero fatigue for a minute now, I think this was the first time since the genre became so popular that the vast majority of people started to echo that same message. And because there is so much of this kind of content in the landscape of entertainment at the moment, I think it puts even more pressure on the content to be the very best. You know, people's standards and expectations have been raised, and so now we're only accepting the very best of what this genre has to offer. And you know, the content that falls shy of that not only doesn't do well, but completely flops. Like, it's completely just dragged through the mud, and it's especially vicious if that content happens to have a female lead character, but we're not talking about that today. But I think this is a well-rounded representation of the best that has come out of this genre for this year. So let's just get into it, shall we? Like I said, I've already talked about this ad nauseum at this point, so let's dive into the winner. Let's go straight to the envelope to see who wins the Jeannie Awards for Best Comic Book Film or Television Series. Ooh! And the award goes to Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Absolutely, guys. Are you surprised? Are you actually surprised? Here's the thing, you know, I was looking at this, I don't know if you could tell, but I was looking at this with a little bit of skepticism, okay? Like, whilst I was saying my spiel, I was like, is this the best of the year? Is this and it kind of is the best of the year. You know, I have my qualms with Doctor Strange 2. I even have my qualms with Moon Knight, which I think at this point has gone from being appreciated to disliked to now underrated. But I did still have my qualms with the show, even though overall I thought it was a triumph. And then we have Peacemaker, which I definitely had my issues with, and I covered that in a What I've Been Watching. So for me, the biggest contenders were The Boys Season 3, The Batman, and Black Panther. And when it comes to The Batman and The Boys Season 3, they were both excellent entries into this genre, but neither of them had the emotional, personal impact that Black Panther: Wakanda Forever did. To me, that is a film that has, it's almost like a landmark within the year. Like it's a highlight of the year for not just being an exceptional film, but also because of, you know, just the meaning behind it, the layers of meaning behind this film. It's an iconic story, one that will go down in Hollywood history, and I just think that supersedes being a very good comic book adaptation. I think that's levels above that for me personally. Even though I had issues with the third act of Wakanda Forever, I also had issues with the third act of The Batman. So if I'm measuring it against that, you know, it's like they're kind of level. It's more momentous, it has more weight, it has more gravitas to it because of real life context, but also because of the story and the worlds that Ryan Coogler weaved. So that just has far more of an impact to me, and that is why I am naming it as the very best comic book adaptation that we have gotten this year. Okay, so for our next category up, we have a special one because we are going to be diving into the best underrated films or television shows of the year. And here the nominees are Bad Sisters from Apple TV+, Ghosts UK from BBC, Half Bad, The Bastard and the Devil Himself from Netflix, Our Flag Means Death from HBO Max, See How They Run from Searchlight, The Bad Guys from DreamWorks, The Bear from Hulu, and The Outlaws from BBC/Amazon Prime. So the main purpose of this category is really to draw you guys' attention to some really underrated movies and TV shows from the last year. I just wanted to give you guys some recommendations for shows that you may never have heard of and that you should definitely check out. I already mentioned some of these earlier. Like I said before, you need to watch Ghosts UK as a matter of priority. Yeah. You absolutely do. Like, you need to check that out post haste. And you also need to check out The Outlaws, because that was another very underrated series. And you should also most definitely check out The Bear if you haven't already. I mean, as I mentioned before, that series was very underrated when it first came out, but then people started to discover how good it really is, and they decided to check it out for themselves. And I think it's grown a bit of a fan base, a bit of an audience since then. But still, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty underrated. So I did still want to include it on this list. I would say that the most underrated nominee on the list would have to be Half Bad, The Bastard, and The Devil Himself. You guys have probably never even heard of this series. This is a British series, or a British/French series that's an adaptation of a New York bestsellers, book. You know how like every book is a New York bestsellers, whatever. But it's a fantasy series that explores the world of, witches and witchcraft, and there are different classes of witches. It's essentially a supernatural allegory for, racism and classism. It's, the messaging is something that we've seen before, but I think it's done really, really well here. But I have to say the main kind of draw that I had to this series was because of like one particular character. One particular character and his relationship to the main character. But I'm not going to get ahead of myself here, because this may or may not come up again later on in the Jeannie Awards. But for now, I'll say if you haven't checked out Half Bad, I would recommend it. It's a really good watch. But now it's time for the envelope of truth. Yes, let us discover who has won the Jeannie Award for Best Underrated Film or TV Series. And the award goes to Bad Sisters from Apple TV Plus. Absolutely well earned. This series was so underrated. I kept seeing it be advertised on IMDb only. That was the only place that I saw it, okay? But when I finally checked it out, I absolutely did not regret it. This was one of the best shows to come out this year, and no one was talking about it. It's a series that's set in Ireland, which is a nice surprise, a nice, bit of variety from what we usually see from the British Isles. But here you have some Irish sisters who are keeping a big secret surrounding Klaus Bang's character's death. That's all I'll say, on the matter for now, because you guys are going to go check it out on Apple TV Plus, and you're going to come back to me and tell me how great the series was, and I'm going to say I know. I'm going to say it. It's really, really good. Okay. Okay, so now for our next category, guys. We are not messing around anymore. The other categories were fun, they were cute, they were high stakes for sure. But this one, this is all or nothing. Pun intended. This is truly all or nothing. This is where things get serious. Because the next category up is Best Actress in a Film or Television Series. Oh, you didn't see that coming, did you? Yes, we are already on that level. Guys, the nominees here are Emma Thompson for Good Luck to You, Leo Grande, Jenna Ortega for Wednesday, Letitia Wright for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and Aisha, Mandy Moore for This Is Us Season 6, Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere All at Once, Quinta Brunson for Abbott Elementary Seasons 1 and 2, Sharon Horgan for Bad Sisters, and Viola Davis for The Woman King. So let's pretend like you guys don't know how this is gonna go. Let's do some actoring of our own, okay? Some pretending of our own. We'll start off with Emma Thompson in Good Luck to You, Leo Grande. Now, this is a performance that I did mention actually in my Golden Globes coverage, and in that video I talked about how much I appreciated Emma Thompson's performance in this film, because it's a film that tackles a really tricky, taboo subject matter with sex work and sex in general and people's attitudes towards sex, and this film aims to explore this subject matter in a very frank and honest way, with each scene peeling back layers upon layers, you know, of this subject as well as the subjects, you know, the characters in the film, so that we get to understand them a bit better as the scenes go on. But it's in a very intimate setting, which is, you know, fitting because it's about an intimate subject. And Emma Thompson, I think, gives a really great performance as a character who is honestly quite unlikable. When you get to know her, you know, I disagreed with a lot of her stances and what she had to say. Of course, they were always planning to challenge her thinking and attitudes later down the line. But I think what really struck out to me about Emma Thompson's performance here is just how, you know, frank and open she was about the topic of sex and being an actress of a certain age. You know, I hate that so much, but it's true. You know, in our society, we wouldn't expect an actress like Emma Thompson at this stage of her career to tackle this subject, and especially not in such a revealing oh, we love a good pun, in such a revealing way, with several nude scenes in the film. So yes, I do think that her performance is absolutely to be commended. So I think she would be considered like a surprise pick, especially considering I didn't include a certain Cate Blanchett. And listen, I did finally check out Tar. Okay, after filming my Golden Globes videos, I was like, let me watch this damn Tar film that's getting all this praise. It's very good. It's very good, unsurprisingly. I never say that these films are bad, by the way. The films that the Golden Globes nominates, I never say that they're awful. I just think that, you know, other films are more deserving and other performances are more deserving. And that's very much the case here. For me, I would say that, you know, Cate Blanchett does incredible work in Tar. I would put her as 9th place. But there's only 8 slots. For me, what it comes down to with these performances is the emotional impact and the stamp that these performances have left behind long after I've finished the film or the TV show. What is the impact afterwards? And for me, if I'm being honest, Cate Blanchett's character in Tar did not leave me with much of an impact. I appreciated the performance as it was happening when I was watching the film. I was in awe of her talent. But afterwards, I was like, okay, well, you know, this is giving me whiplash. But J.K. Simmons' character was just so much more, it gave me a more visceral reaction than, you know, anything that Cate Blanchett did in this film. And they're 2 different films, but they also have some similarity, especially with the 2 characters. So I made that comparison and then, you know, kind of forgot about the character afterwards. But with these performances on this nominees list, that was not the case. All of these performances left an impact on me, and that is why they're here on this list. Now, I think I've already sung the praises of Bad Sisters enough for today, so I'm going to move on to Mandy Moore in This Is Us. And I have to hold my hands up and say I committed a horrible, terrible crime earlier this year by omitting This Is Us from one of my What I've Been Watching videos. I literally could not believe that shit. Guys, let me let you in on a little secret here, okay? One of the What I've Been Watchings was literally designed so that I could talk about the final season of This Is Us. And then I filmed it and forgot to talk. This happened to me several times this year, by the way, where I'll like go through a whole What I've Been Watching and then I'll forget the main show that inspired that video. Most recently it happened with Interview with a Vampire, where I literally made a What I've Been Watching to cover that show. And then I finished off with The Serpent Queen and was like, bye guys, you know, thanks for watching. And then I was like, hang on, there's something missing here. And I checked my notes and it was Interview with a Vampire. And I had to film a whole different video and stitch them together. But I did not have the foresight to do that with This Is Us, unfortunately. So I'm taking this opportunity to sing the praises of Mandy Moore for her performance in the final season of This Is Us. I don't think she gets enough praise, although she gets Emmy nominations. But I still don't think she gets enough praise for her work on This Is Us. What she accomplished on that show is truly remarkable. She was able to portray a young, carefree, beautiful woman in love, and then she she was able to portray a loving, caring mother who's going through all the struggles and the trials and tribulations of being a mother to not only two twins, but also a third adoptive child who's black, who's black and living in the 20th century, okay? And then later down the line, she becomes a grandmother and then becomes a grandmother with Alzheimer's. And all of this incredible character work goes mostly unnoticed, and it kills me every time. I won't stand for this anymore. So I think Mandy Moore absolutely deserves a slot on this list. But now it's time for us to end this acting exercise, okay? Now it's time for us to drop all pretenses, okay? And scene. That's the end of that scene, because now it's time for the moment of truth. Now it's time to find out who has won the Jeannie Award for Best Actress in a Film or Television Series. And the award goes to Viola Davis for The Woman King. Yup. Yup. Absolutely. Was there ever any doubt? Really? Like, if we're gonna be honest, the two main competitors here were Michelle Yeoh and Viola Davis. There was never any doubt, because what Viola Davis did with this role given to a woman who's, you know, in her 50s, even Michelle Yeoh, honestly, that's what makes it really tough this award season, because, and that's why I don't take Cate Blanchett being a front runner seriously, because the fact that we have these two women in their, you know, middle-age kind of era of their life being given these roles that are just not typically given to actresses in that age range, and the fact that they were able to rise to that occasion, not only with their acting ability, because they're insanely talented actresses, like we know that, but just physically what Michelle Yeoh is able to do, you know, with her own stunt work on Everything Everywhere All at Once, and what Viola Davis that to me is just like, why are we trying to, this is a rant about Cate Blanchett, why are we trying to reward a very good example, an excellent example of the same old that we have seen for not only years but decades? Why are we trying to just circle back and just kiss ass to the same old thing that has been popping up decade after decade after decade? Why are we not trying to propel? Why are we not trying to bolster this new era of filmmaking, this new era of acting that sees, you know, actresses that are past their typical Hollywood prime be given these juicy, meaty roles and are able to rise to the occasion of portraying characters that are doing all sorts of things, you know, physically, emotionally, that would not be typically expected of actresses like them? Why are we not rewarding that? Like, that's what boggles my mind. And that's why I go back to what I said about impact. That is the main theme for this whole endeavor, is thinking about the impact that these performances, that these projects have made in the greater landscape of entertainment. And for me, there is no lasting impact in Tar. And so now, naturally, what follows is the category for Best Actor in a Film or Television Series. And here, the nominees are Austin Butler for Elvis, Ben Whishaw for This Is Going to Hurt, Cillian Murphy for Peaky Blinders Season 6, Daniel Kaluuya for Nope, Diego Luna for Andor, Jeremy Allen White for The Bear, Oscar Isaac for Moon Knight, and Taron Egerton for Blackbird. I feel like this is a very competitive list, right? I think I've done a pretty good job with these nominees, I must say. Not to pat myself on the back as both the host and the voter, but I think this is a pretty decent list. And there's quite a few on this list that I haven't really talked about on my channel elsewhere, but I think I've already covered Jeremy Allen White from The Bear and my appreciation of that series overall. And much earlier this year, I did in fact mention This Is Going to Hurt as one of my favorite series that I had checked out at that time, and that still stands true, guys. This Is Going to Hurt was absolutely spectacular, following the life of a doctor who works in the maternity ward, who works in the NHS, mind you, and if you know the NHS, you know that's a struggle, okay? But Ben Whishaw was absolutely ridiculously amazing in this role. Like, truly, he was phenomenal in This Is Going to Hurt. I believe it's on AMC Plus in the US. So if you're done watching Interview with the Vampire, you can go ahead and check out This Is Going to Hurt. But here in the UK, it's on BBC, and elsewhere, I have no idea. As for Austin Butler, he was kind of christened as a contender for Best Actor early on, you know, when people saw footage of the Elvis film. And I have to say, even after having watched more films and more TV shows, I think he still stands out as a serious competitor in this category, because his performance as Elvis was really, really great. But honestly, guys, for this category, I'm just excited to dive into the winner. Let's see who has won the Jeannie Award for Best Actor in a Film or Television Series. And the award goes to... You guys are gonna die. Cillian Murphy from Peaky Blinders season 6. Absolutely. Are you joking? Are you joking? Are you surprised? And if so, are you joking? Yes. Yes. Yeah. This is the only thing that makes sense to me. I don't know about you guys, and if you're confused, perhaps you just don't watch Peaky Blinders. But yeah, Thomas Shelby is an iconic VIP character in all of television, period. So this shouldn't come as a surprise to you. And the fact that Peaky Blinders was on its final season, you know, this year, and it did not get any major nominations for any major awards is appalling. And also, come to think of it, I set you guys homework. I set you guys a task to find out why it was that Peaky Blinders has never been nominated for a major Hollywood award. I think it has something to do with the fact that it's a British series, but then so is Killing Eve. So it's been very confusing for me, because this man embodied the character of Thomas Shelby. And it's not just about his chain smoking. It's not just about his accent. It's not just about his haircut. It's about his persona. It's about the character that he built across the 6 seasons, and the way that it all came to a head in the final season, where you complete this arc of, you know, very similar to Alfred. You started from the bottom, and then you see his come up as the seasons go, only to find himself in, you know, a period of discontent still, because, you know, more money, more problems. And each step of the way, Cillian Murphy just absolutely kills it in his performance. Each step of the way, he is able to convey this character's intelligence, the fact that he's always 5 steps ahead of the competition, but also just how distraught he is from the PTSD that he suffers from his time during the First World War. What really stands out to me about Thomas Shelby, and I think what really stands out to a lot of Peaky Blinders fans, is just how you have this intellectual character who has, you know, had the disadvantage of being born into the slums of Birmingham, and he has had to create all the opportunities for himself. But he paved the way for himself and for his family, and he comes out on top financially, socially. But in this mind of his, in his brilliant mind of his, he is never at peace. He is never at peace. It's almost as if he is cursed to constantly suffer in that mind of his. And Cillian Murphy does internal struggle like no one else. Okay, so now we are officially approaching the top tier awards of the ceremony. But before we dive into that, I did just want to take a moment to pay my respects to the fallen. Yes, this is the In Memoriam section, where we say goodbye to the TV shows that we lost in 2022. And we're back with the final 3 major categories of the Jeannie Awards. This is where the stakes are the highest, guys. And the first one up that we've got is Best Villain. This is a category that is so close to my heart. Close to my dark soul. And here the nominees for Best Villain are John Paul as portrayed by Klaus Bang in Bad Sisters, Khonshu as voiced by F. Murray Abraham in Moon Knight, Larry as portrayed by Paul Walter Hauser in Blackbird, Lisbeth as portrayed by Sonia Mbele in Blood and Water Season 3, Soulja Boy as portrayed by Jensen Ackles in The Boys Season 3, Kamal as portrayed by Patterson Joseph in Noughts and Crosses Season 2, Steve/Brandon as portrayed by Sebastian Stan in Fresh, and Wanda aka the Scarlet Witch as portrayed by Elizabeth Olsen in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. These are the bad guys of the year. When I tell you I had so much fun compiling this list, I really had to dig in deep, think about all of the films and TV shows that I've watched this year to really consider, who was the worst of the worst? Who really sucked? And honestly, there were so many options. Like, honestly, this isn't even like a comprehensive list, okay? But I had to draw a line somewhere at number 8, and this is what we have here. And I'd love to hear your list down below as well, but this is what I've come up with, and I think it's right. I think all of these guys are going to hell, yeah. So let's just do a quick rundown of the crimes that these bad guys have committed, shall we? We'll start off with John Paul, who, like I said before, he is a small man masquerading as a big, strong, handsome, toxic man who hates everything about his wife's family. He resents the relationship that his wife has with her sisters, and he does everything it takes to not only destroy their lives, but destroy her life and her connection to them. He is an awful, terrible monster. And from this description, it might seem not so bad, right? You're like, okay, he's a bit of a mess, toxic masculinity, okay, but like, is he really a bad guy? Watch Bad Sisters. Because the lengths that he goes to make these women's lives miserable is on... Watch Bad Sisters. That's all I'll say on that. Next we have Khonshu. Need I say more? Khonshu is on this list because he tricked me. Khonshu is on this list because he made a fool out of me. Because just when I thought we were on the same page, it turns out we weren't even reading the same book. Khonshu's big twist at the end of Moon Knight, where he shows up in a limo with Jake driving, I lost all respect for the character. I hated him. Like, I had actually come to love Khonshu as a character, throughout the series. I went from hate to love to ending up really appreciating the character until that final end credit scene where I was like, oh, he's Satan. Like, oh, no matter how much Moon Knight begs and pleads Khonshu to be free of him, he's always going to try and find a way to keep those claws, to keep that beak right on Moon Knight's neck. So Khonshu sucks, yeah. And F. Murray Abraham just did a phenomenal job voicing him. And also, I might say, the CG department did an excellent job realizing him. And next, we're briefly going to talk about Lisbeth. She was a human trafficker. She kidnapped Poulet. Many of you guys were gagged by how many times I kept mentioning, but Poulet was kidnapped by Lisbeth and her men. So need I say more? Like, Blood and Water Season 3 went there. Okay, it was deep, it was serious, okay? And Lisbeth was at the center of this criminal underworld. So yeah, she's on this list. Absolutely, she sucks. Soulja Boy in Season 3, we had high expectations for what Jensen Ackles would bring to this character. And whilst a lot of people mentioned that Soulja Boy in the comics is very weedy and a wimp and, he doesn't have a backbone, Jensen Ackles portrayed a completely different version of this character. He went a completely different direction and it worked. Oh my God. It worked so well with the big twist near the end of the season, with his relationship with Homelander, not to spoil too much, but it was just magnifique. I mean, how do you top Homelander as a villain? Just ask Jensen Ackles, because he did exactly that. As for Kamal in Noughts and Crosses, the only thing I will say is justice for Callum. Justice for Callum. Callum's fate was just as painful on the show as it was in the books. I'm still traumatized. And Steve slash Brendan from Fresh. You know, I haven't really talked about Fresh much on this channel, but it was the movie that came out very early in the year from Hulu. You know, Sebastian Stan was having a moment with Hulu this year. On top of being in Pam and Tommy, he was also in this film. And all I can say is cannibalism. All I can say is visible missing body parts, kidnapping women, terrifying me. That's all I can say on that. So yeah, he deserves to be on this list. And lastly, we have Wanda. Now, spoiler alert, sis is not the winner of this category. Okay, I don't usually spoil it because I don't know who the winner is because it's in the envelope. I don't know but I have a feeling if I was to consult with the voter of these awards, that sis would not be the winner of this category simply because of the inconsistent writing, you know, across the board from what we saw of her in the end of WandaVision to what happened in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. But putting that aside, Elizabeth Olsen's performance in Multiverse of Madness was absolutely the highlight of the film. She did villainy brilliantly, and it was such a joy to see Wanda just go full on bad guy, using all of her powers, the, you know, breadth of powers that she has, the variety that she has on hand against some of the most iconic characters in not just the MCU but in comic book mythology. Yeah, comic book mythology across the board. That was iconic, and I think Elizabeth Olsen absolutely delivered on that, even though this character portrayal wasn't consistent with what we saw at the end of WandaVision. And so now it's time to consult the envelope to find out who the winner is for the Jeannie Award for Best Villain in a Film or Television Series. And the award goes to Larry from Blackbird. I mean, when it comes to Paul Walter Hauser's performance, big yay, you know, big thumbs up, big round of applause. But when it comes to the character, big big L. That character was just next level evil. The difference between these other evil characters and Larry is that Larry is neurodivergent. So you can never really guess what's going on with this character because you can't project your understanding of the world onto him. He lives in a completely different reality. The way that he perceives the world and the way that he perceives his actions is so fundamentally different to how, you know, Taron Egerton's character Jim sees things, how the FBI sees things, that it's always a trip to watch Harry explain his actions. It's always a trip to see him go through the accounts of what happened, what he did to these young women, what he did to these girls. If you haven't watched Blackbird, I don't want to spoil it for you, so I'm going to keep it vague. But all I can say is that with Larry, it's just different. With these other characters, you can see their raison d'etre, you can see their reasoning, you can just understand their process. But because Larry is neurodivergent, because he has learning difficulties, because he has the mindset of a child, but his actions are very much not of that nature, that contradiction, that juxtaposition, you could just never reconcile, and it just baffles you each and every time. And Paul Walter Hauser just kills it as this character, but it's so freaking disturbing. Okay, so for the next category up, guys, my heart is fluttering, my palms are sweaty, mum's spaghetti, the whole works, guys, because this is actually my favorite category of the whole awards. I am so excited to announce the Jeannie Awards for Best Romantic Chemistry in a Film or Television Series. Now, before we get into the nominees, I just want to explain the title of these awards, because the original title was Best Couple. It was going to be nice, simple, easy, perfectly understandable. But then I looked at my options and I realized that, you know, some of these guys just aren't couples yet. Some of these guys just aren't on my timeline. So I wanted to include them in the category for sure, but I couldn't in good conscience call them couples if they were still at the will they won't they stage. And also for some of these nominees, they're not good couples is the thing. They are toxic couples. Okay, we'll talk about it, but I still wanted to include them, so I changed my category. Yeah, I changed the parameters of the test, and here we are with the nominees for best romantic chemistry in a film or television series. And here the nominees are Janine and Gregory in Abbott Elementary seasons 1 and 2, Kate and Anthony in Bridgerton season 2, Louis and Lestat in Interview and a Vampire, Nathan and Gabriel in Half Bad, The Bastard and the Devil Himself, Nick and Charlie in Heartstopper, Steed and Blackbeard in Our Flag Means Death, and Wilhelm and Simon in Young Royals season 2. This list right here is why you come to the Jeannie Awards. This list right here is why you arrive, okay? Because this is a very competitive list, and now you understand why I changed the criteria for the category, because some of these guys are not in good relationships. Oh, sorry. Some of these guys are not in great relationships, but the chemistry is undoubtedly there. And how could I refute that? How could I ignore that? I can't. It's out of my hands. It's out of my hands, guys. I had to include them. So I had to change the category name. And first one up we have is Janine and Gregory. They're a will they, won't they. They're a will they, won't they stage. They're not a fully formed couple yet. The chemistry is there. The vibes are definitely there. The looks, the turns, the jealousy here and there, like, it's all there. They're setting up nicely. They're building the foundations for a Jim and Pam for Abbott Elementary. So good work on that front. They have the chemistry. I'm rooting for them, absolutely. Next up, we have Nathan and Gabriel for Half Bad. Remember when I said that there was one particular character that had me frothing at the mouth? Yeah, it's Gabriel. Yeah, like, Nathan is the main character, for those of you who haven't watched the show. Gabriel, VIP. Gabriel is like scene stealer, VIP. Now I have to say, for a while there I was afraid. For a while there I was scared, because they gave us a queer character in Gabriel, and I thought for a second that they were going to ignore the chemistry. They were going to ignore the obvious chemistry between Nathan and Gabriel in favor of Nathan pursuing his relationship with the female lead. I'm so sorry, I don't know her name. Sorry, she's not on this list, you see. So then they gave me what I expected, what I wanted, which was Gabriel and Nathan finally kissing and finally admitting to their feelings. But what's interesting here is that at the end of the show, they end up in this kind of, threesome, this kind of three-way, couple, which is cute. I like the representation of a polyamorous relationship. That's fun. If only the chemistry was as strong in all of the connections. I don't think it is, I'm afraid. I think that the, main highlight of that relationship is the one between Nathan and Gabriel, which is why they're on the list, and the other relationships aren't. And then next we have Nick and Charlie. Now this is where we're getting into like next level territory, because Nick and Charlie, that is tough. That is tough to beat. They have such an adorable, such a heartwarming and just wholesome, that's it, wholesome relationship in Heartstopper. And it's just so refreshing to see with these, LGBTQ characters being represented in such a show that just feels so wholesome, so sweet, so perfect. I'm also surprised that it didn't get any nominations for Golden Globes or Emmys or anything like that. But it was just perfect. Heartstopper was a moment. Heartstopper was just such a welcome, wholesome, sweet chapter in the history of LGBTQ representation in Hollywood. And I absolutely loved Nick and Charlie's relationship. I think they had immaculate chemistry together, and they are definitely at the top of this list, but it's very competitive. Next up, we have Louis and Lestat, Toxic Mess. Toxic. If you had asked me before I watched, I think it's episode 5 or episode 4 where things just go downhill, I would say that they are just like a match made in hell. Louis and Lestat's chemistry is like out of this world, okay? But then things take a downturn when the relationship becomes abusive and toxic, where Louis suffers injuries because of Lestat's tantrum, and that's where I can't root for them anymore. So even though they have insane chemistry together and they're still on this list, am I complicit? I still, in good conscience, as the host and the voter of these awards, cannot grant them the Jeannie Award for the best romantic chemistry, because I mean, it is horrendous. If you've seen Interview with a Vampire, you know it's horrendous. And when it comes to Steed and Blackbeard and Wilhelm and Simon, they're in the same boat in that they have insane on-screen chemistry, and I am the captain of these ships, make no mistake. Okay, I love these these two couples to bits, but they were hampered by the fighting, by the arguments. And you know, I know that we need conflict to keep things interesting, especially for Young Royals season 2, which was on its second season, so the relationship was at a different stage. You know, some of these other couples had the benefit of being at the honeymoon phase, whereas Young Royals, you know, they're being put through the ringer, you know, trying to prove the love that Simon and Wilhelm have for one another. So they've gone through conflict, and it didn't make for the best viewing experience, but it was necessary for the arc of this couple's story. But it does give them a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to this competition. So this is it, guys. These are the nominees for best romantic chemistry in a film or television series, and the award goes to Kate and Anthony for Bridgerton season 2. Okay, so here's the thing, okay? I'm not kidding when I say I was fighting with myself. I was fighting with myself between Kate and Anthony and Nick and Charlie. It was like this. I feel bad because, like, in the end I chose the straight couple, but here's the thing, guys, here's the thing. The enemies to lovers storyline. The enemies to lovers storyline. Weak in the knees. I'm so sorry. Like, I am a sucker for an enemies to lovers storyline. Just like the Academy is a sucker for a story about itself, about Hollywood. When you give me an enemies to lovers storyline, I will eat that shit up. Oh God. So yeah, it's Kate and Anthony. Chemistry off the charts. But they're also the best couple. I think it's fair to say that Kate and Anthony, you know, their whole story arc throughout Bridgerton season 2 was just so well realized, seeing them being at odds with each other at the beginning, and then you have that fiasco at the wedding, which is just so cringe, and then in the end they come together and it's just like a breath of fresh air. Like, it feels earned. And also, unlike, you know, season 1 of Bridgerton, which was littered with a bunch of explicit sex scenes that didn't feel as earned but felt more like, you know, scandal, you know, for the sake of scandal, here we had one main sex scene that really felt and like it felt like a release from all of the foreplay, and I think that was how it was, you know, intended. I just think they set up Kate and Anthony's relationship really, really well. And now we come to the final award of the night, which is the Breakout Trend of the Year. This award is designed to highlight and represent some of the trends that I noticed occurring throughout the year in both film and television, and how that helped shape the landscape of entertainment across the board throughout 2022. These are some of the trends that I noticed, but if you guys have any additional trends that you want to point out, of course, I would love to hear them down in the comments below. But without further ado, let's get into the nominees for Breakout Trend of the Year. First one up is A Royal Affair. 2022 was most definitely the year of the royals, with veteran shows like The Crown and Young Royals coming back for new seasons, with newcomers like The Empress, The Serpent Queen and Becoming Elizabeth coming in there also to give their take on famous royal figures. Add that to the plethora of Queen Elizabeth II documentaries and specials covering her reign for her Platinum Jubilee in June and her ultimate demise in September, as well as, of course, 2022 ending with the bombastic Meghan and Harry documentary on Netflix. This year was most definitely a royal affair. Next one up we have is comic book adaptations. As mentioned before, we had no shortage of comic book adaptations in 2022, with many saying that we had reached a saturation point and shouting out the phrase comic book fatigue more than ever before. But 2022 still brought us some really great entries into this populated landscape, with the third season of The Boys only increasing the popularity of the show, and new entry Moon Knight introducing us to a whole new character that fans came to love. Add that to the film offerings of Black Panther Wakanda Forever and The Batman, which was a Batman film done right. I think it's fair to say that the key to elongating the life of this genre is good content. Next one up we have is Eat the Rich. This was a more minor trend that emerged throughout 2022 that I believe was a direct response to the growth of billionaire culture, something that I discussed in my Glass Onion review. But essentially, as a result of the emphasis on the billionaire status that we have seen emerge in the last few years in society, filmmakers and writers and TV show runners alike have flocked to their favorite medium in order to reflect society's grievances of this emerging culture, oftentimes doing so in comedic and satirical ways. Next nominee is I Want to Suck Your Blood. Yes, vampires are back. But did they ever really go away? This year saw the emergence of several new vampire series like Interview with a Vampire, Reginald the Vampire, What We Do in the Shadows with its latest season, Vampire Academy, Let the Right One In, First Kill, and even the film starring Jamie Foxx, Day Shift. Vampires are more fashionable than they've ever been before, perhaps because of what they've traditionally represented, which is those of us in society who feel othered. Now that is a trend that will never go out of fashion. Next one up is prequel mania. Hollywood is no stranger to repackaging the same old shit time and time again, but this year saw Hollywood make use of existing IPs and going back in time to explore what happened before in their efforts to milk the hell out of these known brands as much as they possibly could, with mixed results. You know, some of these projects were better than others for sure. We have highlights like House of the Dragon and Andor, but they were also unfortunately accompanied by some flops like Book of Boba Fett and Minions: The Rise of Gru, which had a moment there because of a TikTok trend, but in the end, after about a couple of weeks, completely disappeared into the abyss. To say nothing with the complicated situation that Lightyear ended up being. But none of these prequels came close to the disaster that was Secrets of Dumbledore. This Fantastic Beasts film killed the franchise to the point of no return, and it wins the honor or dishonor of being the very worst prequel that we have seen come up in 2022. Next category up is the Who Done It / Why Done It, which is my original word for the true crime series. True crime has been in fashion for quite a while now, but this year saw quite a few entries, so I thought I'd consider it as part of the trends of the year. Which leaves us with the final nominee for the Jeannie Award for the breakout trend of the year. And the winner here is Celebrating LGBTQ Love. This was a huge year for LGBTQ representation, but not the kind of representation that we have traditionally seen on screen. Long gone are the days where the only kinds of gay representation that we could expect was the classic but oh so problematic gay best friend character. But instead, this past year we have gotten several different options, a variety of LGBTQ representation on screen. And in particular, what I wanted to highlight was the love, the romances, the couples that we saw on screen, you know, being represented from this community. And the fact that they weren't all homogenous, the fact that they were all so different. Like I said, the variety was there. Some of them were problematic, some of them were toxic, some of them were adorable and heartwarming. That variety is so key when it comes to representation. And that of course follows suit with what I often talk about here on my channel, and that is the importance of the diversification of representation. And oftentimes I talk about this in the context of Black representation on screen, but it very much still applies for LGBTQ representation as well. And I think the offerings that we have gotten in 2022 speak to this trend. And can I just say that this is a trend that I wholeheartedly would like to see more of in the coming years. Don't let this be a 2022 thing. Let this be the new normal for Hollywood. And with that comes the conclusion of the Jeannie Awards. I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining me on this wild ride. Okay, I have no idea how this video is going to turn out, but I've had such a blast filming it for you guys, and I can't wait to see your reactions. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and thank you for joining me for the entirety of the year. Thank you for your views, your comments, your likes, your engagement. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, and the ultimate award here goes to you guys for being such a great audience. It's been my absolute pleasure making these videos for you guys, and I wish you all the best for the coming year.